Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really getting into something fascinating. The long and honestly kind of weird history of hypnotism.
It really is fascinating. We got some amazing historical accounts here, digging into how this all developed.
Yeah, we're going to pull back the curtain a bit, ready to explore this world of suggestion.
Absolutely. It's a journey through how we've tried to understand the mind, ancient practices right up to the beginnings of, well, more scientific approaches.
Exactly. And it starts like way, way back. You read about things like the mysteries of Isis in ancient Egypt or the Magi in the Bible.
Right, and the wise men of Babylon and Egypt, too. There are these hints, these suggestions that they might have been using techniques, well, kind of like hypnosis.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? And what about the laying on of hands? Does that connect somehow?
Well, you can see a thread, yeah. This idea of transferring influence, maybe energy. It echoes what came later with mesmerism.
And the Greek oracles, like the Pythia at Delphi, going into those trances.
Exactly. Self-induced altered states. It shows this inherent human ability, maybe, to shift consciousness.
Then you get these wild stories, especially from the East. Indian freakers supposedly growing trees instantly or turning rods into snakes.
Yeah, those accounts are really dramatic. Our sources even mention this idea that people in the East were seen as, let's say, more easily influenced than Westerners.
What do we make of that, though? Is there anything to it?
It's tricky. When you look at historical accounts like that, you have to be careful. It might say more about, cultural stereotypes or expectations at the time, rather than actual biological differences in susceptibility. Separating legend from fact is tough.
Good point. Very important. Okay, so let's jump forward. Big leap to the late 1700s, Paris. Frederick Anton Mesmer arrives.
Around 1775, yeah. And he brings this big idea, animal magnetism.
Right, this invisible fluid idea permeating everything, influencing living things.
He genuinely believed he could harness this fluid, channel it for healing. He took it to the scientific academies, but, well, they weren't buying it.
Except Berlin. Didn't they reply?
They replied, yeah, but it wasn't exactly an endorsement. So right off the bat, skepticism. Big time.
But his treatments, they sounded like quite the show. This oak tub. Describe that again.
The back cave, yeah. Like 4 or 5 feet across.
Yeah.
Filled with bottles, some supposedly holding magnetized water, iron filings, powdered glass, bent iron rods, ropes.
Sounds like something out of a wizard's workshop. What was the point of all that stuff?
The idea was that these materials could conduct or maybe store the magnetic fluid, and he'd treat loads of patients at once. They'd hold hands, forming a circuit,
Circuit, okay. And if someone wasn't responding?
Then the assistants described as like the handsomest, youngest, and most robust magnetizers would step in. They'd use iron rods on the stubborn patients to get the fluid flowing, supposedly.
Wow. And the reactions people had, not subtle, right?
Not at all. We're talking dramatic stuff. Fits of yawning, stretching, eyes closing on their own, legs going weak, feeling like they couldn't breathe.
And music playing to amplify it all.
Apparently so, yeah. The accounts mention convulsive movements getting worse with music and sardonic laughter, moaning, tears, people thrashing about. Really intense.
It sounds almost like mass hysteria looking back.
It certainly has elements of that. And for the women having the strongest reactions, there was even a padded room.
A padded room? Seriously?
Yeah, the sources mention it.
Right.
Where they'd apparently, bang their heads against the walls or roll on the floor. A far cry from a modern clinic, huh?
Definitely. And Mesmer himself, in the middle of all this.
Oh, he was the star. Picture this. Lilac coat, carrying a magic wand, staring deep into patients' eyes, holding their hands.
Performing final passes, what were those?
Like gestures with his open hands, rapid arm movements. He was definitely playing a role, building the drama, the mystique. It all added to the atmosphere, the suggestibility.
And he wrote it all down, his theory.
Yep, 1779. A pamphlet with 27 propositions about animal magnetism. This universal fluid, magnetic properties embodies how it can be passed around, stored up.
So the official medical folks, the Faculty of Medicine, they weren't happy.
Not at all. They even threatened one of his key supporters, a guy named Deslan, said they'd kick him out.
But the government, they were okay with Mesmer at first, even offered him money.
Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they saw potential. Or perhaps just swayed by the public buzz. Hard to say. But the pressure from the medical establishment got too much. Mesmer left Paris.
But he came back.
He did, yeah. His pupils, his followers, actually asked him to return. Shows how much belief he inspired in some people.
Which led to those government commissions in 1784, right, to investigate properly.
Exactly. Two of them. One had big names, Benjamin Franklin, Lavoisier.
Wow, Franklin.
Yeah. And the other was from the Royal Academy of Medicine. Only one guy in that second one, Laurent de Jussieu, actually backed Mesmer.
So what did they look into? Did they focus on whether people actually got better?
Surprisingly, no, not really. They were more focused on proving or disproving the existence of this fluid.
And what did they find?
They noticed that the mesmeric sleep only seemed to happen when people knew they were being magnetized. And it was different in public versus private settings.
Ah, so context mattered.
Big time. Their conclusion? It wasn't a fluid, it was imagination. That was the active ingredient here.
Imagination. And didn't Deslon say something interesting about that?
He did. Something like, well, if imagination is the best cure, why shouldn't we use imagination to cure people? It's a really early hint at the power of the mind-body connection, isn't it?
Absolutely. A real turning point, moving towards psychological factors. But the story didn't just stop there.
No, people kept experimenting. By the 1820s, another commission, persuaded by Dr. Forsac, actually acknowledged things like somnambulism, sleepwalking, and even anesthesia as part of this state.
Anesthesia, like pain relief.
Yeah. They even suggested it could be a useful tool for doctors. That's a pretty big shift from calling it all imagination.
Huge shift. But it wasn't smooth sailing, was it? Wasn't there another unfavorable report later?
That's right. In 1837, another commission basically poured cold water on it again. So you see this back and forth in the scientific community. They were really wrestling with it.
Which brings us finally to James Braid, the English doctor.
Yes, Braid. He really shifted things towards a more, well, modern scientific view. He's the one who coined the term hypnotism.
From the Greek for sleep, right. Artificially produced sleep, sometimes called Braidism.
Exactly. His contribution was key. And funnily enough, he started out as a total skeptic.
Oh, really? How did that happen?
He went to a public show by a magnetizer, LaFontaine, in 1841. Wasn't impressed. But then he saw a patient who genuinely seemed unable to open their eyes.
And that sparked something.
It did. He thought, okay, maybe there's a physical cause here, not some magic fluid. He figured the fixed staring was maybe exhausting the nerves controlling the eyelids.
So he tested it.
Yep. Got a friend to stare at a bottle, his wife to stare at a sugar bowl. And guess what?
They fell asleep.
They did. Which showed him sleep could be induced by physical means, by focused attention and fatigue, not necessarily by a mysterious fluid being passed around.
So his conclusion was basically physiological, nerves, fatigue.
Pretty much. He thought it was about a physiological state of the nerves caused by tired eyelids or other internal physical things. He got support from physiologists named Carpenter, but the medical establishment overall still slow to catch on.
Interesting. And wasn't there an American guy around the same time, Grimes, with electrobiology?
Yes, 1848, Grimes. Using a different term, but observing similar things.
Yeah.
Shows people were looking for more sort of natural explanations on both sides of the Atlantic.
Right, moving away from the mystical stuff.
Exactly. And Braid's ideas eventually got picked up more widely in France around 1850, thanks to Dr. Azam.
So France and Germany became the hot spots for studying this, more so than England.
Yeah, for a while, though England caught up later. Our source also brings up that old idea again that French and other Latin people were supposedly easier to hypnotize than Northern Europeans, like the English or Americans, and that people from the East were highly susceptible.
There's that susceptibility thing again. Still sounds a bit suspect, culturally biased maybe.
Very likely, yeah. Cultural expectations, the methods used, rapport. Lots of factors could explain those perceived differences better than just, race or origin.
Okay, let's look at what our source calls modern scientific findings from that era first. Idiots, babies under 3, and the hopelessly insane couldn't be hypnotized.
Right. That suggests you need a certain level of cognitive ability. Focus, understanding instructions seems necessary.
Second, concentration of attention is key. Essential, it says.
That fits right in with Braid's work, doesn't it? The subject's own mental focus is crucial, no matter the technique.
And third, neurotic or hysterical people were not easily hypnotized. And they define hysteria carefully here. Irregular nervous system action, not just excitability.
Yeah, that's an important distinction based on the understanding back then. It actually contradicts some earlier ideas that linked hysteria with high suggestibility. So a more nuanced view was emerging.
But then, contradicting that a bit, this Dr. Fauveau de Courmelles pops up. He says some hypnotists just can't hypnotize certain easy subjects. He even brings back the idea of a sympathetic fluid or a negative force.
See? Even then, the debate wasn't settled. The idea of some kind of personal connection or vibe, maybe, between hypnotist and subject just wouldn't quite go away for some researchers. Shows how complex they found it.
There's that lovely analogy in the source, too, the musician finding the bridge's resonant frequency at Niagara Falls.
Oh, yeah. Comparing the hypnotist to someone finding the right note for the subject's inner world, their emotions and sensibilities.
It's a really evocative way to put it, isn't it? Finding that point of connection.
It really captures that idea of resonance, of tapping into something deeper, maybe unconscious in the person.
So, boiling it down, what's the basic idea of what's happening during hypnosis, according to the source? The will goes to sleep.
Sort of, yeah. That part of the brain seems less active while other faculties get sharper, maybe. They talk about blood flow changes. The subject becomes more automatic, acting on suggestions because that critical, willful part is quiet.
Which leads us to those two main theories they discuss. First, the neurosis theory, linked with Charcot.
Right. Charcot saw hypnotism as linked to a kind of nervous system issue, a neurosis, basically a vulnerability, like hysteria or hallucination. So for him, only people with this underlying vulnerability could be hypnotized.
So not a normal thing, but a sign of a susceptible nervous system.
Exactly. It positioned hypnotizability as sort of a symptom, not a general human capacity.
Okay, and the other theory, the suggestion theory.
This one shifts the focus completely. It's all about the power of the mind over the body. Like you focus on your arm feeling heavy, and it starts to feel heavy, right?
Yeah, it happens all the time.
So the theory is, the hypnotist directs the subject's attention to a belief: your eyes are closing, your arm is stuck. And that belief starts to make itself real. It lowers resistance. The Nancy School, they really pushed this. Their method was basically convincing the subject their eyes were closing.
So it's psychological, belief, expectation, focus.
Yes, precisely. A very different angle from Charcot's biological neurosis-based view. It puts the power in the interaction, the suggestion itself.
Okay, practicalities. How did they actually do it back then? Dr. Koch, the American, had methods for Americans.
Yeah, he outlined two main ways. First, the mental method. Eyes closed, try to blank your mind, and the hypnotist just tells you can't open your eyes. Very direct.
Relies purely on suggestion then.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And your ability to follow that instruction to, empty your mind.
And the second way, more physical.
The physical method, yeah. Stare hard at something bright, like a coin. While you're staring, the hypnotist keeps suggesting your eyelids are getting heavier. You can't keep them open until they close. This was apparently the go-to for stage hypnotists.
Using mirrors or spinning discs, too, sometimes. Why the focus on the eyes, the staring?
Probably twofold. It forces concentration, focuses the mind, and it literally makes your eyes tired. Creates that physical sensation of heaviness, making the suggestion easier to accept.
Makes sense. We also hear about a stage hypnotist, Dr. Herbert L. Flint. What was his approach?
Flint emphasized starting slow. Build calm, build confidence. Get the person gazing at something, then suggest tiredness, weariness. Then the steady gaze into their eyes, monotonous voice suggesting sleep stages, heavy breathing, relaxation.
He'd test them too, like with the arm.
Yeah, suggesting the arm is heavy, seeing if they respond. Sounds like a more gradual, guided process. Combining the focused attention with verbal cues and physical checks. Creating expectation.
But Flint also said it wasn't one size fits all, right? Different people respond differently.
Absolutely, he stressed that. Intense gaze, hand gestures, tone of voice, physical passes. What works for one might not work for another. You had to be adaptable. Read the person.
Shows it's quite personal, the interaction.
Very much so. Requires flexibility from the hypnotist.
Then there's that weird little story about Dr. Burke and the patient in catalepsy reacting to a copper doorknob.
Yeah, that's a curious one. Suggests maybe certain physical stimuli, materials even, could trigger something in a susceptible state. Hard to know what to make of it, really. Still kind of mysterious.
And Dr. Liebalt's rapid method, just hand on the forehead and confident talk.
Seems like it. Just place the hand, then confidently rattle off suggestions for different problems all at once. Monotonous speech, but apparently delivered with real conviction, like an ardent and penetrating tone. The belief behind the words seemed key.
Confidence is king, maybe.
Could be a big part of it. Then you had the Hindu method, totally different.
Right, the steady gaze and swaying for like 10, 15 minutes in silence.
Exactly. Very passive. Just sustained focus, quiet environment, highlighting how important concentration and lack of distraction are. Different paths to the same state, maybe.
And the demonstrations, showing the power of suggestion on a whole class. Seemingly awake people.
Yeah, pretty amazing stuff described. Eyes sealed shut just by saying so. Hands stuck together. Bodies going rigid catalepsy, making them stutter. Even hallucinations.
Imaginary mosquito bites. Pockets full of molasses. That's wild.
It really shows how suggestion could seemingly override normal senses and create these vivid, shared, uh, false realities within a group.
The hand clasping experiment is brilliant too. Trying to pull apart makes them stick tighter.
Yeah, because they're still following the underlying suggestion, keep hands together, even while consciously trying to resist. Shows how paradoxical suggestion can be.
And Miss Flint getting a whole audience involved, people acting out roles like newsboys or hunters just based on her words.
That points to, suggestibility in groups, social contagion. In the right atmosphere, these things can spread quickly.
Okay, gotta ask about the broom story. The young man thinking it's his sweetheart.
Ah, yes. Hilarious, but also quite telling, isn't it? Fully immersed in the suggested reality. Courting a broom, kissing the bristles, totally deaf to everyone laughing. The imagined reality completely took over.
And the guy whose head was supposedly on fire, trying to put it out.
That one's more alarming. Shows how compelling these induced hallucinations can be, driving real, potentially dangerous actions. His brain was acting as if it were real.
Then the sideshow Barker suggestion, just told to do it, and bam, he's up on a table giving the whole spiel.
Yeah, it shows how hypnosis can maybe unlock existing knowledge or skills, tap into cultural scripts, letting someone perform complex behaviors from a simple prompt.
Okay, so Charcot comes along and tries to classify all this. Chapter 3, 3 stages.
Right. Professor Charcot. He proposed lethargy, catalepsy, and somnambulism, trying to bring some scientific order. He also mentioned extreme lethargy or trance, and at the lighter phase, fascination.
Let's break those down. Lethargy. Rubbing the forearm makes the hand bend.
Yeah, specific muscle reactions.
Yeah.
Rub one set, the hand bends sharply, becomes rigid. You could even hang the person by it, apparently. Rub the opposing muscles, it goes back to normal, shows altered muscle tone, reflexes.
And people sleeping for months in this state. That sounds incredible.
Those are extreme documented cases, yeah. Shows how deep these states could potentially go, though definitely not the norm.
Then catalepsy. Triggered by opening the eyes from lethargy, or sudden lights, sounds.
Exactly. Light seems key. Or a sudden noise, a gong, whistle, even thunder. The main thing is this marked muscle rigidity. Limbs stay wherever you put them.
And you could make parts paralyzed just by rubbing muscles or nerves.
Yeah.
Reversible with electricity.
So the source says. And that incredible rigidity allowing those human plank experiments persons suspended between two chairs, weight on top.
Just hard to picture. And the hemilethargy, hemi-catalepsy, one side cataleptic, one side normal.
That's fascinating, isn't it? Lift one eyelid, only that side goes rigid. Suggests a really localized effect in the brain, maybe. Lateralized control.
And the mind in catalepsy. Still responsive, like with Donato's music experiments.
Seems so. Soft music creates bliss. Loud music causes distress. Suggests they're still processing emotionally, maybe even more sensitively, despite the physical rigidity.
But no memory afterwards? And no real physical signs of the emotions they displayed?
Generally, yeah. Complete amnesia for the cataleptic period.
Yeah.
And the emotions seem superficial. No racing pulse, no heavy breathing, just the outer mask was active. A real dissociation.
They also mentioned that strange backward bending, defying gravity.
Yeah, forming an arc, head touching the floor sometimes, shows the profound changes in physical capabilities.
And devotional poses, appearing spontaneously.
Suggests maybe underlying thoughts or beliefs are still bubbling up, influencing posture unconsciously.
And that unconscious memory. Seeing soap leads to miming washing hands. Seeing an umbrella causes shivering.
Right. Automatic associations kicking in. They might write if dictated to, but not start on their own. Maybe even speak languages they don't consciously know, luring into the next stage.
Somnambulism. Deeper stage. Memory gets really weird here, doesn't it?
Very weird. Richet's experiment. Learn verses while hypnotized. Remember them only when hypnotized again. Forget when awake. Unless
you suggest they will remember upon waking.
Exactly. Shows memory can be state-dependent, but also influenced by suggestion, bridging the gap.
And senses and memory seem heightened. The woman singing opera arias, she couldn't sing awake.
Yeah, that case suggests hypnosis can unlock latent talents, things usually outside conscious reach. Raises questions about our potential, right?
Definitely. Dumont-Pollier's experiments, too. Seeing a picture with one eye, blank card with the other, just based on suggestion.
Remarkable. And the conflicting emotions shown on her face when different suggestions went into each ear simultaneously shows incredibly specific control over perception.
Charcot's experiment with the imaginary portrait on the blank card. picked out from identical cards.
Likely due to heightened visual acuity, noticing a tiny, insignificant mark, maybe, shows how seemingly magical things might have subtle sensory explanations. Need to be careful, observers.
Dr. Cox's personal story arm numb, despite knowing it wasn't, obeying contradictory commands, then memory loss.
A classic description of somnambulistic dissociation. Awareness splits off from sensation and action. Amnesia follows.
Then there's Dr. Warthen's idea about Wagner opera fans, self-hypnosis through intense focus.
An interesting thought, could intense absorption in art create a similar altered state? Heightened emotion, focused attention, maybe some overlap.
And he tested it, playing Wagner to hypnotize subjects.
Yeah, Ride of the Walker. Increased pulse, respiration, excitement. They recalled feeling like they were riding furiously. But the music had no special effect when they were awake. Shows heightened response under hypnosis.
And Dr. Cox's deep self-hypnosis, hours of memory loss, acting rationally but with no recall.
Demonstrates the power of self-suggestion to induce really profound states, complete with amnesia.
Okay, shifting gears a bit. Chapter 6, Simulation and Deception. This gets tricky.
Very tricky. How much was real, how much was faked? The source says simulation was common.
It even suggests studying hypnotism could blur reality, maybe even resemble insanity temporarily, and that faking could become deliberate, for gain.
Yeah, it raises serious questions about reliability. And the ethical side, too, when reality perception is so malleable.
Examples like Ulysses stealing while seeming dazed, then falling asleep when caught. Kleptomania intertwined.
Shows how underlying issues could complicate things, making it hard to separate genuine states from maybe manipulative behavior.
Binet and Fear said simulation was a huge challenge for researchers, right? Physical signs being the most reliable thing to look at.
Makes sense. Objective measures are always better than subjective reports, especially here. But even physical signs.
Not foolproof, like the guy faking death for an hour, no breath, no pulse.
Astonishing control over autonomic functions. Shows even seemingly solid indicators can sometimes be manipulated.
And the Montaigne-Calefox analogy, training yourself to do impossible things through practice, like cataleptic rigidity.
Good analogy.
Yeah.
Shows how conditioning and repeated suggestion could build up these seemingly superhuman abilities.
The source asks if being a professional subject became a social position, with rewards, attention, leading to skepticism.
Naturally. If there's gain involved, you have to question authenticity. Social context matters.
Like Hublot being fooled by his somnambulist Emily for 4 years, even asleep, people can deceive.
Definitely unsettling. Shows the altered state doesn't guarantee honesty. Motivations are still complex.
And Dr. Louis' experiments at the charity hospital. Mislabeled tubes, fake magnets, but the subject acts out the expected response.
A perfect illustration of suggestion and expectation trumping reality. Marguerite acted perfectly based on the labels, not the contents. Cautionary tale about observation.
And even pulse and breathing checks aren't enough, as some can control them.
Apparently so. Which led Mr. Ernest Hart to write about the eternal gullible and share the confession of Elle, the professional subject.
Elle confessed she faked it all, learned to simulate catalepsy, was never unconscious, always heard everything, did it for money and attention.
Pretty damning confession. She said strong suggestions were easy to act on, could fake rigidity, even painlessness, really exposes the theatrical side.
And the source points out natural pain tolerance varies hugely anyway, right? People having surgery without anything, fakers enduring hooks.
Exactly. So apparent painlessness under hypnosis might sometimes be high natural tolerance or learned control, not just the hypnosis. Need to consider that.
So the conclusion on simulation, amateurs get fooled, no perfect test, but experienced observers can likely spot fakers with care. Deception exists, but doesn't invalidate the real phenomenon.
A balanced view, yeah. Acknowledge the faking, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Simulation itself is an interesting aspect of the state.
Okay, big question time as we near the end. Can people be hypnotized against their will? Scary thought, right? Criminals using it.
Huge concern. The idea of involuntary control is powerful, though maybe more complex in reality.
Dr. Louis thought they were defenseless, right?
Don't we?
Could be made to sign things, make false claims. He did those fictitious assassinations.
He held that extreme view.
Yeah.
Yeah, complete loss of will. But those stage things might not reflect real-world pressures.
Because Dr. Koch found differently. Subject hesitates to throw a lamp, thinking it's water, at someone, but stabs readily with cardboard. Hesitates again with a real knife.
Exactly. Koch's work suggests internal barriers, moral limits, self-preservation maybe, that resist harmful suggestions. especially against others.
Koch also thought you couldn't be hypnotized by someone you actively disliked. Need some rapport.
Makes intuitive sense. Trust, or at least neutrality, seems important for letting go initially.
The source offers a common sense take. Maybe weak-willed people susceptible to certain things might be influenced similarly under hypnosis by dodgy hypnotists.
Right.
But if the act itself or the hypnotist is truly repulsive, the subject probably resists, even deep down. Most experts agreed on that.
Seems to be the consensus. Hypnosis works within your existing framework, doesn't usually force totally alien actions.
Like the guy who stole something while hypnotized, then refused commands to return it because he'd already sold it, even though he'd do imaginary crimes.
Fascinating. Shows self-interest or practical reality can still operate, even when highly suggestible. It's complex.
So, key takeaways from the source. Seances can be exhausting. Don't trust dodgy hypnotists, like in real life. Don't let stage hypnotists make you look silly just for laughs.
Pretty solid advice, still relevant today, highlights risks and need for responsibility.
In Dr. Hurt's dramatic story, the young lady becoming hypersusceptible after he treated her cough, needing to be sent away, him just passing her train induces sleep.
A striking case of potentially heightened, lingering suggestibility. A conditioned response, maybe?
Hart's own take was interesting. He thought it was self-produced. Her belief that he wanted her to sleep was key, more than his actual will.
Yeah, emphasizes the subject's internal state, their belief system, as perhaps the primary driver, even overriding the hypnotist's conscious intent sometimes.
And that quote. Anyone can dabble, but intelligent use needs understanding of hypnotism and disease.
Crucial point. It's a tool requiring knowledge and ethical care, especially therapeutically.
Dr. Koch believed proper use didn't weaken the will long-term. That's reassuring.
Offers balance, suggesting responsible use doesn't make you permanently more suggestible.
Then the success stories. Dr. Esdale removing a tumor, painless surgery, shows the potential for analgesia.
Absolutely. Powerful demonstration of hypnotic pain control.
But dentistry didn't pan out so well. Too many failures led to it being discredited, mostly.
It seems effectiveness was too variable for routine use there. Reliability issues.
But usefulness in nervous disorders, fixed false beliefs, like Christian Science methods, maybe physicians could use hypnotic suggestion too.
Suggests a role in mental health, psychosomatic issues, where belief and suggestion are powerful levers for change.
Illustrated by those two contrasting cases. Gabrielle C. cured of paralysis by suggestion, but Leon B. showing no improvement, staying grumpy.
Perfect examples of the variability. Not a magic bullet. Depends on the person, the condition.
Briefly touching on hallucinations common with illness, drugs, not just hypnosis. Good context.
Right, helps differentiate induced phenomena from symptoms of other conditions.
And Father Kircher's hen experiment. Drawing the line, making it freeze. Or farmers rocking hens.
Shows that tonic immobility in animals, yeah. Looks a bit like hypnosis, but probably different mechanisms. Not directly comparable.
Like opossums playing dead or hibernation. Different things.
Exactly. Important distinctions.
Okay, final stretch, Chapter 11. Dr. Hart's theory trying to explain it scientifically. Source says it's complex, no single easy answer.
Still true today, really. The search for a complete explanation is ongoing.
How do words create delusions like painless surgery, Professor William James's work?
Intriguing experiments, telling someone a line isn't there and they don't see it. Even with the prism, they only report seeing the refracted image of the invisible line. Shows suggestion overriding perception.
And the Red Cross experiment. Not consciously seen, but still producing the correct afterimage.
Fascinating. Suggests the sensory info is processed subconsciously, but blocked from awareness. Selective filtering.
Carpenter's hungry boy analogy, seeing food causes salivation. Mind influences body automatically.
Basic idiomotor principle. Thoughts trigger physical responses, relevant to hypnosis effects.
So Hart's theory boils down to controlling blood flow in the brain. Less here, more there, like blushing or turning pale.
His idea, yeah. Subject learns to regulate cerebral blood flow, restricting it in certain areas on command. An early physiological model.
Then Dr. Koch's thought transference experiment. Girl tasting bitterness when he eats pepper.
A really striking anecdote. Hints at some kind of direct connection or heightened sensitivity. Still unexplained territory, mostly.
And the subject describing objects in a locked closet in another room. Identifying a tin engine by sound she shouldn't have heard.
That one's truly baffling if reported accurately. Pushes the boundaries of known senses, raises questions about ESP or extremely subtle cues.
The source writer's own apparition experience after a fall. Vivid, unexpected, while lucid.
Personal accounts like that show how altered perception can arrive from various conscious shifts, complex relationship to hypnosis.
And the claim that hundreds of similar credible reports mean it's scientifically proven, that's a big leap.
It is. Anecdotes are intriguing, but scientific proof requires more rigorous, controlled evidence. Still debated.
These reports led to thought transference tests, some success with names, numbers, but failure with the sealed banknote challenges.
The inconsistency is key. Why success in informal tests, but not under strict high-stakes conditions? Suggests other factors, cues, chance might be involved.
Like the writer guessing coin tosses from their brother's subtle cues, hypnotized people being expert muscle readers.
Highlights the power of unconscious communication. Subtle physical cues expressing thoughts, amplified perhaps in hypnosis.
And finally, Mrs. Piper, the medium entering trances at will, speaking languages she didn't know.
A famous case, extensively studied, generated huge debate about psychic phenomena, trance states.
With spirit personalities emerging. Dr. Finuit, Pelham.
Yes, these distinct personas appearing during her trances, interpreted in many ways psychological, spiritual.
Leading Professor James to say the world is more complex than we are accustomed to think it.
A fitting quote, acknowledging the limits of understanding when faced with such perplexing phenomena.
Mrs. Piper felt she was passive, controlled by external powers, with total memory loss.
Her subjective experience matches descriptions of deep trance and dissociation, altered agency.
So the source suggests viewing mediums like her as maybe expert self-hypnotizers showing similar phenomena, a possible explanation, while still acknowledging the complexity.
It's one way to frame it, yeah. Connecting these different types of altered states through shared mechanisms like suggestion and dissociation, while still respecting the mysteries Professor James pointed to. The mind is incredibly complex.
Absolutely. What a deep dive.
Yeah.
From ancient mysteries to scientific debates, staged shows to potential therapy. Hypnotism's history is just packed. Really makes you think about the mind's suggestion reality itself.
It certainly does. A lot to ponder.
Indeed. Well, that's all we have time for today. Join us next time on The Deep Dive for another exploration.